Barry Sherman was a Canadian multi-billionaire and founder of Apotex, a pharmaceutical company and world leader in generic drug manufacturing. He found success in battling giant multinational big pharma companies and was not afraid of litigation, having filed hundreds of cases through his career. He was also a well-known philanthropist, donating multi-millions of dollars and providing foreign aid whenever he could. He was brilliant and generous, but also a ruthless businessman. And on Friday, December 15th, 2017, Barry and his wife, Honey Sherman, are found dead in their Toronto home. The death is initially ruled a murder-suicide, but after a private investigation was initiated by his family, it was later ruled a double homicide. So who killed the Shermans and why? Join the theorists as they wedge themselves between big and little pharma in the Big Pharma Billionaire Murders.
Welcome to Alien Theorists Theorizing Case File 258, the Billionaire Murder Conspiracy. I'm Braden.
I'm Zell.
And I'm Andrew.
Woo! You know what month it is? We're doing another special month. We're doing Murder Month.
Murder Month.
In fairness, that's a wicked mustache, Andrew. Andrew did say mustaches and murder all month.
That's why I wanted the theme to be mustaches and murder. And I have a group chat, and I literally got fucking crickets. Sitting there like an asshole, being like, I guess it's not.
And I acknowledged it in my head, and I forgot to respond.
Not even. Listen, you couldn't even give me the dad thumbs up. Nothing. I got nothing, boys.
The only time. Well, I was worried if everyone said they were going to do it, then I would be peer pressured into doing it. And honestly, outside of the summer months, like peak summer, like July, I can't pull off a mustache, especially winter months. I am cultivating mass right now. And I use the rest of this beard to frame my face, or else I just look like a thumbprint. So, yeah.
There you go.
Hey, if I turn sideways,
I will shave a mustache in before the month is over.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm big talk until I have to put the fucking mask back on at work, and mustaches and masks are a nightmare.
So you can have a mustache for facial hair. That's your one thing you can
I can have any. I have to be able to seal on the side. So I can have a mustache, you can have a goatee, anything like that. But
little tickler right there.
Oh yeah. But I went for the chic. But this is just what grows on my face. Like I don't even twist it. It just does it on its own.
It's amazing.
Honestly, it's a good look.
Really good.
Yeah. I feel like you could be on the street hawking pickle baby merch.
Here's the problem is every time I grow a mustache, I unintentionally look just like Charles Bronson. There's no control. Look it's fucking Charles Bronson.
Fucking snorted whiskey onto my keyboard.
It's like I'm either a pugilist or I'm fucking Charles Bronson. There's no way around it. But I'll be Tom Hardy playing Charles Bronson. That's better.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Whatever you say.
Yeah, Murder Month. I mean, over the years of this podcast, we've dabbled here and there in a little true crime, sometimes supernatural, a little conspiracy related. Here and there.
But one thing always has to kind of, be consistent is that it has to, have some sort of level of mystery or a paranormal element or a spooky element or alien element. And so that's what we're going to do this month. We're going to focus on some more murder. And this one, the Billionaire Murders, that is, of course, we're talking, this is a true North mystery.
Absolutely.
Canadian mystery.
True North, true crime.
This is all about, the billionaires, Barry and Honey Sherman of Toronto. They were the 12th
Toronto
richest people in Canada, which I think, pretty low worldwide.
Low worldwide, but
high in Canada, top 12. I mean, it's not bad.
You get to be a multi-billionaire. I mean, you have ungodly wealth.
Boys, that's a whole lot of toonies.
Oh yeah,
it's a fucking ton of toonies.
Fucking Scrooge McDuck himself, man. He fill up a pool with that.
Anyways, I mean, so with these cases, there's always a little mystery, a little conspiracy interweaving.
Yeah,
They both work.
Yeah, both work.
Both works.
But this one from 2017, I remember we briefly touched on a power hour back then. We're like, no, this is fucking weird.
Well,
Weird.
The reason we touched on it in a power hour, and those listening, I'll do a quick summary of the power hour back then. This quickly touched the news because of, not very often a pair of billionaires die. And then it was the initial
it's Canada. It's not very often anybody dies.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the initial kind of reports that were getting into the news was that this was, possibly murder-suicide. And then we talked about it on a power hour because what felt like months after the case at the time, it came out that, you know what? Maybe that was it was actually targeted double homicide. Right. And so that it turned into the husband killed wife into someone killed both of these billionaires. And since then, this has spiraled into a wild case of who done it.
5 years later. Yeah, it's looking pretty wild. So, like all good cases, you got to start at the beginning. So, on the morning of Friday, December 15th in 2017, Barry Sherman, multi-billionaire, founder of big old Canadian pharmaceutical company Apotex, also a well-known philanthropist, was discovered in his basement of his measly 12,000 square foot home just outside of Toronto in a seated position, legs outstretched, with the right leg crossed neatly over his left, his back to his basement in-ground pool. Pretty awesome. Like, you're a billionaire. You can have that at this time.
Come on, it's just a lap pool.
Yes. A couple laps in the morning, no big deal. He was wearing his glasses. He was perched. His glasses were perched undisturbed on his nose. He had had a bomber-style jacket slightly pulled over his shoulder, his arms at his side, and beside him, his wife, Honey, in a similar position, wearing a light coat, pulled over her shoulders, her hands at her sides, both dead. When paramedics arrived, they suggested the couple had been dead for at least a day, if not more. Rigor, lividity, and other signs of early decomposition were obvious. Oh. The crime scene is set. So the paramedics must have arrived, deduced that these bodies are at least a day, if not more.
Yeah, and so oddly enough too, they were actually found by the real estate agent. So I guess Honey and Barry had recently put their house up for sale, and this real estate agent tried contacting them for a couple days, saying, "Hey, you know what? We have some buyers in town. They really want to look at your house. We want to do a showing." Got no answer. Didn't think anything of it. Probably assumed that they were out of town, and kind of, like most houses that are for sale, there's a lockbox, right? So, helped herself to the lockbox, let the people in. And when they got down to the pool house,
she was showing them around. Like, they looked at the upstairs, like everything was A-okay. They go down the spiral staircase. She's like, "Oh, you got to see the pool. The pool is the piece de la resistance of this house." She walks down the spiral stairs in the back corner, and there's an adjacent underground garage there. You can come in through that way, and then there's a hallway down to the pool. And she notices there's some papers and stuff kind of scattered around, and she's like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." As she's looking at them, they're like real estate papers that Barry was supposed to print off and sign and send to her. And she's like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of weird." And there's some like a briefcase. So she just kind of picked it up and like put it on the desk. Didn't think anything of it, right? She's like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." We're
gonna get into it. This lady's a fucking pro.
She handled it well.
She puts those selling sunset chicks to shame. Like,
someone include this girl on a reality show.
Literally, like Braden's saying, she cleans up these documents and keeps going with the showing. Gets to the pool, cracks the door, sees Barry and Honey hanging from a railing in the pool. Quickly shuts the door and is like, "Hey, you know what? The owners of the home are actually doing yoga in there right now. They need privacy. I'll show you guys out. You guys have seen the bulk of the house." And the couple that are looking at the house from wealthy people from mainland China are like super offended because she's like, "You need to get the fuck out of here." Like, showing's over anyways.
Time to go.
Time to go. So she plays it super cool. Then, okay, so apparently this entire time, the housekeeper is actually in the house. So she goes up to the housekeeper and is like, listen, you need to go downstairs right now and fucking check this shit out. So it's kind of fucked up that she forces this poor house cleaner to go down there and find the bodies. But one of the most bizarre things to me is immediately upon confirming that they were both deceased, obviously she calls 911, right?
That'd be the first, you would think, right? The first thought. Get the cops, get the paramedics, get the coroner down here.
Wrong. She calls Honey's sister.
It's her sister.
That's a strange one because, I mean, maybe they're friends. Maybe they knew each other, right? Maybe they were close. So maybe it's one of those things where it's like, they're dead. If you see that they're dead, I don't know. It's a weird one.
You know what? You're 100% right though. Cause she was really close friends with Honey's sister. And that's why she got this gig. But I mean, like,
you would think that you're just lifelong intuition of when you see a dead body, like
911. Well, and plus the other bizarre thing too is it took her 90 minutes after discovering the bodies to call 911. And then the other thing that leads me to believe, like,
what did she do in that 90 minutes?
She called Honey's sister, that type of shit, got the people out, finished the fuck. Hey, listen, she wants to make the sale. Right. So
she's a consummate pro, man. Could you imagine the commission on whatever the fuck that house is selling for?
100%.
$15 million house. What did you get? 3% on the first 100,000 and 1.5% on the rest.
Yeah,
or something like exactly. A lot of money.
But so that was kind of bizarre to me that, she calls the family first before calling, and 911, because the call did come in like, hey, look at there are people down here, they might be dead, because the paramedics did arrive on scene with full intentions to work the patients. Like when you call 911 and you get a report like the described scene, that right away comes in being like, hey, listen, it's probably an obvious death.
Well, and right? If you, and like, let's just point out really quickly too, when I think everyone, when I pictured this, Andrew, when you picture this, you picture them like hanging from a railing into a pool, like they're hanging.
How else would you hang somebody off of a railing into a pool? Like that doesn't make sense otherwise. Obviously, the pool is drained and they're dangling into the pool, right?
Yeah, I have a picture of the pool here. I think I can pull up here. Yeah, so that's the pool railing, right, that they were hanging off of. And then there's an artist rendition of like how they were found. And it's like this.
Which is not at all how anyone reading that description would see how, like, picture them being hung in your head.
Well, that's a handrail around a pool. So what, it's a 3-foot handrail?
Yeah. Like they're not hanging into the pool. They're hanging on the fucking.
They're on the pool deck.
On the deck.
With their back to the pool. When you think like hanging, you would think like
hanging into the pool.
The pool. The pool was empty or something, or whatever. Like it just, it's suspicious. Just sitting there, both of them seated like that.
Super bizarre.
It doesn't make, when you see it, you're like, well, that's suspicious.
Well, and one of the big things that you hear from like the first responders, the real estate agent that found them, it seemed staged. It seemed odd. Like people described it as like some type of like Halloween theme, like just spooky looking, off-putting fucking, I don't know how
they're wearing their clothes of the day, kind of like their jackets thrown over their shoulders.
No, but there's no blood. There's no real signs of struggle. Like it's just,
it kind of looks like Honey may have been hit in the face.
Which is interesting.
They'd say trauma on her face.
Yeah. It's super interesting that you bring that up. I don't want to jump around too much, Al. I don't want to screw you up. But do you say like, so Honey did have some trauma to the side of her face. But the interesting thing about this, she had abrasions, but there was no bruising around the abrasions, right? Which leads you to believe that this was either like perimortem or postmortem trauma, right? Because if she was alive, there would be swelling. There would be blood flow to that area. There was no swelling.
Right. Yeah, your body naturally tries to get blood to that area if it gets hit or cut or.
Right? Well, and then just to from one of the things I read, and this may be wrong, but like it had looked like their jackets, like when you can like almost handcuff yourself by pulling off your jacket and then leaving it on, right? Like if you leave it on your hands and then pull it down to your waist, you can kind of sit like
fucking time I take my kid's jacket off. It's a fucking strap with that. It's awful.
So that's how their jackets were. Both of their jackets, almost like their jackets were,
like they drugged them by their jacket.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, exactly. Right. So
not saying that I dragged my kid by his jacket or anybody.
Yeah, no, never. But I mean, like they were, it's Barry was totally fine. No issues with his face. And they were at the time of their death, 75. Barry was 75 and Honey was 70. Right.
Yeah, they're elderly people. From all accounts, they are not super athletic. They didn't really keep themselves in good shape.
But they must have been taking the most like premium grade generic pharmaceuticals to be in.
Yeah, they had premium grade generic. They had Vicodin. They had all the good stuff.
So
they had a whole
PC
supply
brand
at their fingertips.
Yeah, they're good. So where does that leave us out? Like, so we have the paramedics arrived, called it on scene. They're both DOA. And then, let's get into the Toronto Police Service's investigation.
Well, yeah, originally the deaths are treated as suspicious, obviously, you would think, by the Toronto Police Service Homicide Squad.
What, 3 feet? So, yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Both of them. Yeah, it's not like 2 people seemingly hung by kneeling or sitting. Suspicious, to say the least.
Yeah.
So they originally said cause of both deaths were ligature neck compression, which I guess is just another term for strangulation.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then something else to add to that is super weird is both their hyoid bones were intact.
And that's that U-shaped little bone, right?
Yeah, that's normally fractured when there's...
So usually when someone is strangled or choked really hard, that fractures. And if you usually try and hang yourself, a lot of times it doesn't.
No.
So they say if it's broken, it's murder. If it's not, it's suicide.
Usually, yes.
As like a generic term, that's kind of
what was Epstein?
His hyoid bone was fractured.
He was broken.
Yeah, his was broken into a billion pieces.
So by Zell's standards, murder.
He
heard it here first.
It was murdered. It was murdered. All right. Yeah, so that leads them. It's suspicious. Both they're strangled, but their bones aren't. That bone is not broken. So the Toronto Police Service told the media, told the news, the good old CBC, CTV, and Global, that there's no signs of any forced entry. So they did not include a search for suspects right away because no signs of forced entry. Which I get, but for me, when I read that, I was like, especially in Canada, especially if you're in a nice neighborhood, do you lock all your doors all the time? All the time?
Not to mention, listen, okay, I understand that too. You don't necessarily have to lock all your doors all the time. There's literally a fucking key to your house hanging on the front door that a lot of people have a code to.
Like one of those little lock boxes
right?
Yeah. And there was a lot of people coming and going because they were selling their house. They were in the midst of some renos. Right, we're going to get into it further down the road, but there, a room was just painted. A window may or may not have been left open for that room to dry.
Definitely left open.
Yeah, 100%. So it's right. The interesting thing is though, the Toronto police, they're not really looking at suspects. They're actually looking at the Shermans for this.
This is a domestic dispute gone bad. They could rule it a potential murder-suicide.
They leak that to the press. This is a potential murder. Our leading theory right now is that this is a domestic dispute that, turns into a murder-suicide. And they actually start questioning Barry's associates and family, not about did he have any enemies? Was there anyone that was upset with him? They start asking, did he potentially have any illnesses that he may have been terminal and he was going to kill himself for?
And killed his wife, took her with him? What the fuck?
Well, and another reason they thought that is because, she had that face trauma. So they kind of just...
And he didn't, I guess.
He didn't. So he struck his wife. Maybe she fell or whatever. Whatever it is. That's what they came up with that right away. Murder. That's their initial thought. And everyone knows, everyone's seen the show, listened to all the true crime podcasts, the first 48.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a potential suspect,
And
you got 48 hours to, and what happens after 48? The chances
Goes
go down
cold.
like drastically.
yeah.
Drastically down.
And I just want to say that the Toronto police chased the murder-suicide theory as their leading theory without looking at other theories for 5 to 7 weeks. 5 to 7 weeks they looked at this.
Well,
Didn't
and,
even give a fathom to anything else.
they didn't fingerprint any of the fucking people who frequent the house or any of the close, like family, friends, relatives, anything like that. They didn't do any interviews with friends, family, anything like that. They didn't check for fucking security cameras at his business where they were both seen together prior to the fucking the death. And they didn't check the neighbor said, hey, I have some suspicious shit on a fucking camera. And I'll get into that a little bit later about the significant information from that, and said, hey, look, I have this and it's going to be deleted in 7 days. You guys need to look at it. And they didn't look at anything for over a month.
And they didn't, I mean, this is a house undergoing renovations to be sold. So painting and touch-ups and little finishes. As far as I know, none of the workers were contacted right away. Like it was just like
they literally tunnel vision and were like, hey, no forced break-in, nothing was stolen. This
All good
case
here.
solved itself. Another one in the books, boys.
You've done it again, Magoo. But listen, boys, I will say one thing, and I think this might be a contributing factor, oddly enough, because when I was looking into this, right around the exact same time, they had actually just busted Bruce MacArthur. And do you guys remember who Bruce MacArthur was?
Yeah, he was
Who's that
the
again?
military guy that killed those 17 people.
Yeah, one of Canada's most prolific serial killers.
oh, the one in Nova Scotia.
No, it was in Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto
He was in
area. He was
Toronto.
burying them in planners.
Yeah, so basically this Bruce MacArthur, like by all means, this guy's in his 60s or whatever, right? So kind of unassuming, ex-military guy. He was predatory towards the gay community, went after a lot of like closeted gay men, would meet them online and murder them and buried them in some poor lady's fucking yard. And her planters. He was doing like landscaping work at this lady's house.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, right. And this is this is literally like he might be one of Canada's biggest serial killers. I'm pretty sure. If I'd have to look into it, but
Picton's, I think, number one.
they had just busted him. Right, so that was going on at the exact same time. So I'm wondering if maybe that was drawing a lot of their attention, and so
Too
unfortunately,
many resources.
Barry and Honey kind of dropped a little bit further down their priority list, which is no, there's no excuse for that. None.
No,
Zero.
but so with this, like, this, basically leaking that the Shermans had, it was a murder-suicide by Barry, potentially that's what they're looking into. What did the family think?
The family went fucking nuts.
They went nuts. As you would, I mean, your loved ones are dead. You're trying to do anything you can to try and solve the case, to try and get to the bottom of it, and you're not happy with the answers that the police are giving you. Like, there's no way it's murder-suicide. It's crazy. It's crazy talk.
You know what? And it's probably perfectly normal to be in denial in these situations, but with this case, like, it's exceptionally ridiculous to think that this was a murder-suicide.
100%. So in response, the friends and family noted that, this is a mansion, so it has 9 entrances, and Barry and Honey, they're known for helping in the community. The families told the police they would probably let anyone in at any time of day if they needed help. Like, they would even think about it.
Oh yeah, the Girl Scouts are still there, buddy. They came in and delivered cookies fucking 2 years ago. They moved in.
Oh yeah, the chocolate
Complete
mints.
strangers, anything. They would try and help anyone out. They would probably, they had so much money, they would probably buy them groceries, get them in cash. Like, they would do anything to help people. It's like it's been documented for their whole life. There's some shadier stuff we'll get to in the future, but they have helped a lot of people, right? They definitely have. So the family gets a little up on the police about it.
Well, they start coming out consistently saying like, hey, listen, there's not a fucking chance, right? They wouldn't do this. This wouldn't happen. They wouldn't do this. You guys got to look at another avenue. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense for our parents. This doesn't make sense for uncle, whatever, whoever basically the family consensus was this is a load of shit. There's no goddamn way that Barry would have killed Honey, let alone kill himself after.
Right. And then they even contact Brian what's his name? Brian Greenspan. He's like one of the most famous like
Canadian lawyers.
Canadian lawyers of all time. A Canadian lawyer, respected and prominent defense lawyers like in history of Canada. Like he's the top dog.
And it's an interesting one because they're getting a defense lawyer to try to help point this, investigation in the direction of having someone convicted.
Absolutely. Like they basically got the Canadian Perry Mason.
Yeah. The Matlock, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, they got him, but they also got him to help them hire a private investigator. Because they're like, if the police don't have the time or they're not looking to help us with this case, we're going to do it. We have the money. We can do it on our own.
Unlimited resources.
They have the money.
Right? So they hired David, is it Chason?
Chason, yeah.
Chason. He's a retired forensic pathologist for Ontario. He's like he's an he's one of the best of this field as well. And
he's one of the best of the best, sir.
He's the best of the best of the best, 100%. And he conducted a second autopsy and established that the couple indeed had been murdered.
Yeah, so like we start with the hyoid bones were still intact. He ended up finding out that there was skin missing from both Barry and Honey's wrists.
Which, like they've been bound.
Which means they were bound, most likely with zip ties.
And it was removed.
Right? And one of the most substantial things that he found is that the two men's leather belts that they were hung from were not used to strangle them.
It was a different device.
It was different. They were strangled in some other way. The two belts were not used to strangle them. And you know what
the width of the industry or the width of the injury didn't match like the size of the belt or something?
That's a good question. That's just all I know is that
I'm imagining that's he's like, this is a fucking 1-inch strangulation and that's a 3-inch belt or something. Like he's like, this pretty much called the first autopsy a slop job.
Absolutely.
So you guys, what are you doing here?
The private investigators that were hired, they just walked into the crime scene. They just basically were like, are you guys looking at this? Look at it. I mean,
you see this?
If you look at the crime scene, so where they were laid out on this 3-foot railing, there was some drag marks, right? Leading, which means that floor can be marked. That's a pretty interesting fact that there was drag marks, a little ways away from them that shows this floor can be marked. And they said, isn't it peculiar that if you were hanging yourself, you wouldn't struggle even in the slightest when you were suffocating? You wouldn't kick your legs, scuff the floor, nothing. You just would sit there until you died. Not a chance. Nobody. Like your body just would naturally react.
Everybody has that regret once you initiate. Like it's just a defense mechanism, right? Unless they heavily sedated themselves.
Yeah.
Prior to, right? Which would be hard to fucking hang yourself after being sedated.
So this type of tile floor, they must have been walking. They probably scuffed their shoes and be like, oh, look, I made 18 marks just without trying. Right? Because there is some of those tile floors, like some gyms and stuff, depending on on the soles of your shoes, you can just like go a little squeak and they're like, oh, there's a scuff.
There's a scuff. There's a scuff. There's a scuff. Now it's one of those things where it's, all this stuff is very quickly when the private investigators and they get the second autopsy he's done, they're just like, were you guys even looking? Were you guys even looking? Did you check? Did you look at anything possibly else other than this? And the Toronto police were like, well, that's funny you say that. We thought it was a double homicide, targeted homicide the whole time.
Well, and if they would have even bothered to fucking interview the family members, they would have known that they never went into this pool area to begin with. Honey, she had bad knees. She couldn't do the fucking stairs. Right? She refused to use to use that area down there. Plus, there was that fucking spare bathroom where they found her cell phone in it, which they never used.
And Honey refused to park in the underground parking lot because she would have to walk up the stairs. Right?
Yeah.
So she would park on the top level so she didn't have to go anywhere.
Right? So everybody's like, this doesn't make fucking sense. And finally, their feelings are being vindicated by these private investigators being like, yeah, this is a fucking sham. Like, it's a fucking, what are those Keystone cops? Like, who's doing this?
Keystone Light.
Yeah.
I mean, the honey in the basement, I thought about it. She never uses it, but I think she could, if she had to, she could get up the stairs. She's chose, my knees hurt. I don't do it.
If you're being forced to? I mean, you're going to do this.
I'm just saying that the fact that she never used it doesn't mean she had never been down there.
Now, just to the note, what Andrew said is the bathroom upstairs where Honey's phone was found was the closest bathroom to the entrance she would have entered. So private investigators, were thinking that maybe when she came home, because she would have arrived home just before Barry, that perhaps she saw someone in the house and made a beeline for that bathroom to try to call for help.
Right. Because oddly enough, I mean, they don't have any record on her cell phone of her calling 911, but the day that they suppose that this happened, the day they were last seen, there was a dropped 911 call made from the area, and they couldn't find out where it came from. They went to the address where the call came from, knocked on the door, and the people who lived in the same area as them were like, we didn't call 911. What are you talking about? Right? So they think it might have been pinged in the wrong area.
Bad ping, yeah. Yeah, it's fucking wild, man.
Right?
So pretty much to sum it up what's happened so far, on December 15th, 2017, their bodies are found. 2016, or December 16th, the autopsy is performed, the first one. They determine it's a ligature neck compression, probable murder-suicide. December 21st is the funeral. The family gets mad. They hire a private investigator. They do a second autopsy on the 23rd. The private investigator comes and inspects the house on the 28th. And it wasn't until, what was it? January 26th is when the police finally come and say, yeah, it was a double homicide. So it's like, how was that 60 days later?
But yeah, I'll tell you what, the Canadian version of the first 48 sucks.
Yeah,
everybody's getting away.
First 60 days. Yeah. Hey, we got 60 days. We'll try our best,
First 365 in Canada.
Yeah. Fucking brutal.
It's right. But if any hot leads, anything is now cold. Like you are now looking at a.
It's not just because of the weather, boys. It's fucking cold because they blew it.
Yeah, absolutely blew it. And it's funny because when you look up this case, you really have to dig to find out how bad the Toronto Police Service dropped the ball, because most things have been scrubbed where they're like, all the reports now are like, yeah, it's a targeted double homicide. We have a pretty good idea what we think has happened. Still to this day, no suspects announced. Still to this day, no arrest, no charges.
The best evidence that they have is that they have a unknown person that was captured on a security video near the Sherman's multi-million-dollar house in North York. They say at the same time frame as the murder took place, they have somebody entering and exiting the front door of the house 3 times on December 14th. And that's between 9 and 10 a.m.
And that's new information. At the time, they had, because the police didn't do their diligence and go collect footage, they had no security footage at all.
Yeah.
And that's all we have. They estimate the height of this person. It's not even a person of interest. It's a suspect between 5'6" and 5'9", and that's it. They can't tell male or female, skin color, nothing. Hair color, because it's dark, and that's all. So that's all we have. Just
I'll share the picture of the suspect in this case. Where is it? This one here. You see this? I mean, could you get any more nondescript than that? Might as well be a fucking Peter Pan shadow perform the murder.
The only identifying feature of this person said, the only identifying feature was he walked with a weird gait, like a slight skip or a weird leg swing.
You can see it right there the way he's walking. Look how far he's leaned back while he's stepping.
Yeah, so that's the only identifying feature is that weird walking gait. And that's it. That's the only suspect they really have any type of evidence of. It's just one security video. So.
Yeah, it's quite wild. Now,
but there's my beer's empty, so we're gonna get to some more history of Barry Sherman, but I got a refill. You need a refill?
Yeah, let's get a refill, and then we'll get into who the Shermans were.
All right, grab a beer. We'll be right back. We're back.
Now, before we can get into, we want to get into like, how did this happen? Who could have possibly done it? But I think to really get a grasp of who these suspects are, we got to look at who Barry and Honey were.
Absolutely.
Who were they? Why do we care?
Yeah,
why do we care that these people were
why they
double murdered?
Billionaires.
I mean, there's a lot of double murders all the time. No one cares about them. Why do we care about these people? So, let's start with Barry. Now, he's from a Jewish family in Toronto, born in 1942. His father had a business he's a business partner for a zipper company who died from a heart attack when he was only 10. He lost his father at such a young age. I got to start that again. This is fucking written weird. Sorry.
Sorry, man.
Just missed a couple words. All right, we're going to start with the history of Barry Sherman. He's from a Jewish family in Toronto, born in 42. His father died from a heart attack when he was only 10. So, he lost his father figure, so he focused on schooling, focused on getting real smart. Real fucking smart.
Fucking wicked smart.
Like wicked smart.
Wicked smart.
Yeah. And in fact, he was wicked smart.
You know what? He was. He focused on math. He won national physics contests. He attended the Forest Hill Collegiate Institute, graduated with top marks in 58. He went to University of Toronto, U of T. He graduated the engineering science program. He's pretty much going to be an astronaut at this point. Like, he's taking astrophysics. He's really, he's at the top of the food chain as far as academics. In summers, he worked for his uncle, Lewis Lloyd Winter, at Empire Laboratories. At the time, it was Canada's largest wholly owned pharmaceutical company. Right? So early on, he got a taste of big pharma.
Yeah, and basically...
well, actually, kind of little pharma.
Little pharma. Little pharma.
Because what pharma?
Empire Labs was basically, this was the proving grounds for Barry Sherman, because he learned the ropes of generic drugs, because that's what his uncle did at Empire Labs. Is he did on a small scale what Barry would eventually turn into his whole career.
Yeah, and it's, and it's cool too, because it's kind of like a rags to riches story, because he started at the bottom. Like, his job was, his job at this test was basically delivering pregnancy tests. Right? Like, he wasn't even allowed in the lab at the beginning. He had to work his way up in this company as well.
Well, his uncle made him earn the pedigree. So he ended up going to MIT, right? And graduated a PhD in astrophysics in 67. So he's legit going to be like an astronaut. He's astrophysicist. He is a super smart guy. I mean, this is graduating at 67. You're right, the peak of the space race too. Like, he could have easily went in to work on the space program in some fashion.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so now his uncle, having his nephew Barry lost his dad. He takes him under the wing. Like, he's showing him the ropes. He kind of like teaches him everything he knows about the business and how to run it until his untimely death in November 1965.
At the age of 41.
Young.
At the age of 41. All right? This guy died of an aneurysm. And you want to make things even a little bit more fucking weird? Well,
yeah.
His wife at the time of his death was actually terminally ill with leukemia and ended up dying 17 days later.
So within the span of 17 days, Empire Labs loses its, basically its founder and then
owner-operator,
and then the person who would inherit the company, leaving the company in disarray.
Yeah, like, it was left to I guess you would say, the executor. And make things even sadder, they left behind some orphans.
4 young kids.
4 young boys that were orphaned, lost their parents. Like, your dad, could you imagine losing both your parents within a 17-day span? And like, we're talking kids as young. I think the ages were like 3, 4, 5, and 7.
Like,
young.
really
young.
Kids. An absolute tragedy. But, through this tragedy, and not right away, mind you, but Barry, used this to basically, and not right away. It took a while for the dust to settle on all this stuff to, all the legal framework of both of them passing so quickly, not having a succession plan set up or anything like that. But Barry actually goes on to purchase Empire Labs 2 years later.
Yeah. After he got his PhD, he came back, saw that the company was kind of being ran in a fashion that his uncle probably wouldn't have approved. Things maybe have gone to disarray. And he right away stepped in and be like, this isn't right. I can do this better. This is not what my uncle would have wanted. And he stepped in with a business partner that he met at MIT, and they purchased Empire Labs.
Empire Labs. And in his words, he pretty much said, if he didn't purchase at that time, in his opinion, the company would have been worth nothing and it would have been dissolved and it would have been toast. It was being run to the ground in his opinion. So he's like, I want to buy it. I have a partner. So he buys Empire Labs. What a great name too, Empire Labs.
Unreal name.
So he runs Empire Labs for a bit. He ends up selling it, right?
He does, yeah.
He sells it, but then with the money he starts.
He turns it into like a multi-million-dollar company by the time he sells it, though. Like the profits.
He turns it into a lean, mean machine.
Yeah, and then he gets offered $2 million for the company, which he does in turn take and sells.
Yeah, for a small company, great deal. So he takes it, and in turn, he starts Apotex not long after.
Yeah,
right,
and now, go ahead, Brandon.
And now, so basically, when you look at this, he's taken control of Empire, right? He had a partner, he had executives, he had other people involved in this, and by selling this company, now he starts his own, where it's now he is basically he is the Grand Pumbaa, right? Like he is in charge. He controls every aspect of this company, and this company grows to be Canada's largest domestic pharmaceutical manufacturer.
They were the first company to secure the compulsory rights to manufacture diazepam.
What is diazepam again?
Like Valium.
Oh, so Valium is not an opioid, though, right?
No, it's not. It's a benzo.
It's like
it makes you sleep.
Benzo.
Yeah.
And not only that, they got. I'm pretty sure he had exclusive rights like doxycycline as well, which is like a antibiotic that's massively prescribed and has been for since having. That's fucking major, boys. That's partnering. I think doxycycline. He partnered with Pfizer.
Yeah.
Right. So this guy it's not a. Is it private at this point? It's a small company.
It's a privately owned company.
So it probably has some shareholders, but he owns most of it, and he's directly competing with Big Pharma. Big Pharma's coming into Canada, setting up shop, and he loves going to war with these guys.
Oh, dude, through Apotex, you watch some of the interviews with him, he's basically calling these big pharma companies scum suckers coming in here and just absolute scum, flea-ridden, making profits off the back of sick people, charging these patients exorbitant amount for name brand medication. And he's basically calling them crooks, liars, thieves, scum of the earth. So he and Apotex are making generic brands, for a fraction of the price. For a fraction of the price, so that his big thing is people shouldn't be impoverished, to treat their ailments. Right? That's not what Canada's about.
He's basically self-proclaimed himself as the Robin Hood of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Of Big Pharma.
Yeah.
He's stealing. He's pretty much, in his mind, he's stealing from Big Pharma, stealing the business and passing the savings on to the Canadian population.
And and he's not scared because everybody that steps to him, he's tying them up in litigation and going to court and winning. At one point in time,
wins some, loses some.
He was voted the most litigious man in Canada.
Wild.
Yeah,
right?
he thrived.
No.
He thrived on going to war with Big Pharma. There's interviews with him you can watch on Fifth Estate and stuff where it's in his office, and his office, it looks like it's been ransacked, but that's how he was organized. And everywhere you look, there's stacks of paper, and he goes, each one of those is a different litigation.
Legal binders everywhere.
He goes, every single one of these is a current litigation that I'm, and he it's not like he had lawyers, but he also went through all this shit himself. The guy was a workaholic. He never stopped. People said he was awkward to talk to. He was hard to talk to because all he did was work. And and he to be honest, you don't get to be the 12th richest person in Canada if you're not doing something like that. But he was also like, a giver, right? Like he helped out lots. His charitable, donations and stuff were crazy.
They're of note, and you don't have to look far to see what he gave back. I mean, at this point, he's taken the company. He's from a couple $1 million company to 10 to 100 to 500 to $1 billion, multi-billion dollar company. And he's giving back. He's giving $500 million to the United Jewish Appeal. I think he got a minus
funds, 0 off that.
Or 50 million, sorry. Yeah, you're right. 50 million to the United Jewish Appeal. He provided funds to build a major addition.
That's just the conversion. That's just a conversion from a Canadian to American.
Yeah, if you're wondering.
Yeah.
If you're wondering, it's not a big deal. It's a little bit of money, but not a lot. He gives funds to build a major addition to the Baycrest Health Science Geriatric Center and to other community centers around the Toronto area. He's a major donor to the United Way. He starts the Apotex Foundation and donated another $50 million to medicines to world disasters.
Like literally every single time there was like a huge natural disaster, anywhere in the world, Apotex would ship out millions of dollars worth of generic brand, no-name brand prescription drugs to help. Right? Every single time. Without fault.
By 2007, he has so much expendable income. He doesn't mind, in the public eye at least, just shipping off millions and millions of dollars of drugs and helping people. But he doesn't even stop there. At this point, there's thousands and thousands of employees, right? And he hears of employees in financial struggle. He helps them out. If they have loans, he bails them out. There's multiple accounts of that. What does he do? He supports orphan cousins and
family, right? We've talked about the winter kids, right? They had the 4 orphan winter kids.
Yeah, he helps them out with financial endeavors and business.
He floats all their business endeavors. He's
helps them with houses, personal loans.
Okay, so I looked into this a little bit. So we're going to get into one of the more famous cousins of his in a bit. This cousin, one of the brothers, I think there's Carrie and there's oh shit, I can't remember his first name. One of the cousins, anyways, he's actually since been deceased. This cousin, addicted to crack, not living a good life, unfortunate life of somebody who lost their parents young. There's a lot of trauma there. He probably looked at different ways to deal with that trauma, got into drugs. He ends up getting accused of murder and goes to trial, and Barry puts up a fucking $100,000 to bail him out, pays all his legal expenses, gives him a job, gives him a house. And then unfortunately, this cousin ends up overdosing and dying within weeks after of getting Barry posted his bail. But
I think before the time of his death, he had, between loans and purchases, had given something in the excess of $15 million to those cousins.
The 4 cousins,
the family,
the 4 cousins, right? Yeah. So it's he looked after his family. This was a family man, right? I mean, he does
look after family. There's right?
There's nothing stronger than
family,
right? The guy, he's got a heart of gold, right?
Blood stick in the water.
Who would want to hurt this man,
right?
Unless he was an absolute piece of shit.
Was he a philanthropist or shyster?
Right? Well, just a great businessman. You be the judge.
Let's get into it. Let's get into the shadiness here, boys.
Because after his death, usually when someone dies, a lot of stuff comes tumbling out. So after his death, through as many companies he controlled, he made large donations to several of the foundations he had set up in the Apotex name. And under Canadian tax law, pretty much what you can put into those companies as charitable donations, you can get back in tax credits. So it really just wipes it clean.
You're not doing jack or shit,
you're
right? You're not.
Then you can loan back out against that company because they made this donation. So it looks good on paper, but in the end, did it really do much?
it's more beneficial for you.
Literally everything that this guy does is fucking calculated.
100%.
He's playing 4D chess. And people, you don't see it. You just see these big, oh, wow, he's donating this and he's doing this. Well, everything this guy does, he has ulterior motives.
Everything.
Right?
So
Everything.
He donates millions of dollars, which writes off that tax off his corporations he owns. And then he like borrows back from his own businesses as like a piggy bank.
It's genius. It's fucking genius. It's shady, but it's genius.
He loans himself back the money that he's just, there's three parts.
He's written it off.
He's donated, he's written it off, got a tax credit, and then he takes the money that's been donated and he loans it back to himself.
And it's totally legal.
Totally
legal.
Himself
because it's his corporations.
Yeah.
That's where the law gets so wild because the corporation.
But that's it, right? Hey, boys, that's it. He doesn't do anything else shady, right?
No, well, at a single time, he had almost racked a total like loan amount of in excess of $6 million, which by all accounts, by CRA and everything is like, they're like, that's insane to do this.
That's a lot.
Not illegal, just a little questionable.
Just not many people have the funds to be able to loan that much back to themselves after donating millions of dollars. I guess few and far between.
Right, so those you instantly start to question these charitable donations because he was using them for his own means.
But if,
right?
like, listen, if you, but like honestly, so we get that. But if you, let's say you ask, let's ask professionals that are in the same industry with them, or like intellectuals working in universities, they would have nothing but good things to say about this, upstanding pillar of society, philanthropist, right?
They fucking hated him, despised him.
Right? It's quoted as him being called a deplorable human being by Amir Adaran, who is he's pretty much practices law at the University of Ottawa, and he claims, I couldn't verify this because I've never really used generic drugs. I never have, not yet at least, but he claims that Canadians actually pay some of the highest prices in the world for generic drugs, and he is just gouging Canadians. Actually,
well, he had a monopoly on the generic drug system, right? So he was just using it to enrich himself. And meanwhile, he's going like, "Wait, these big guys are hurting Canadians, and I'm here for them." And meanwhile, he's fucking, on the other hand, just gouging on Canadians, sick Canadians who are looking for cheap generic drugs that they probably could have got cheaper elsewhere.
Well, yeah, because I mean, so his drugs were cheaper, but he was making much more of a profit per pill than Big Pharma was making. So
yes.
Big Pharma, let's say Big Pharma selling a pill for $10. It costs them, I don't know, let's say $7 to whatever to create it. He's selling it for $8, but it costs him $3.
Yeah.
So you're getting a deal, but he's also making a fortune on it.
His profit margins are way more than Big Pharma.
Way better.
Well, and also think about the fact that Big Pharma, think about the money that Big Pharma sets into like research and development and shit like that. And then Buddy's just fucking ripping off the recipe and fucking reselling it.
Yeah, all those,
right?
like a lot of these legal battles were from these drug companies basically accusing him. They're like, you're stealing our patents, right? At one time, there's a fucking wild story of one of Barry Sherman's top executives with Apotex was actually sleeping with a high-ranking member of Bayer, and they were having an affair.
Like Bayer aspirin and all that type of shit, right? Like big time, big pharma, big wig,
big pharma.
And somehow through this affair, the employee for Barry Sherman ended up with 1,500 pages of documents with patents and like basically their secret sauce. He got the Colonel's recipes, babies. Like Absolutely. If you're telling me that was a plant, that guy did that to get those for Barry, right?
He's prostituting for patents, bud.
Right. And then like Bayer and Bayer, they have no choice but to then something shady's happened. He's got the 12 herbs and spices, and now their only option is to sue Barry to try to prove that, right? That
he's great at legal battles.
And he's winning.
And
you imagine how infuriating that would be?
Dude, at one time, he had 100 legal battles going on at one time. 100?
No. At the time of his death, he had upwards of 1,200 open.
1,200?
1,200.
Jesus. How do you, That's insane.
Well, we're going to get into why he's
It's fucking crazy.
suing and why he's getting sued, because Barry maybe just didn't always just practice. And you know what? He didn't have all his money in fucking the pharmaceutical business, did he?
No, it's well, the one thing, before we move on to that, I
fucking giggling here. I can't help it.
I really want to just quickly say that, like, he also kind of, he by all accounts was like, hey, listen, Big Pharma fucking hates me. They hate me. They hate what I'm doing.
Yeah.
He's like, why don't they just hire someone to kill me? He's like, they could get someone to knock me off. $1,000. He's like, in the hands of the right person, I'm sure they could have me killed.
Fucking
And
$1,000, bingo, bango, bongo, body.
He said they have private investigators, basically tailing him at all times.
Tailing him and tailing his employees. They sit in the parking lot and they watch, and they're all the time. And rightfully so. I mean, if you start stealing trade secrets and profiting.
It's alleged that at one time, and this is obviously denied wholeheartedly by Bear, but there is an alleged scheme because he had fucking pissed off top executives at Bear, that they were trying to plant either child pornography on a laptop and put it in his office and then call the authorities, or
the nose beers.
Or, put an unseen amount of drugs in his car and then call the authorities when he was driving.
Cocaine.
Right? These were alleged plots because they were just like, well, he's doing underhanded tactics against us, so we're going to fight fire with fire here, right? Like, and, obviously everyone wholeheartedly, we would never do that for an upstanding company.
For sure. We would certainly not plant kiddie porn or cocaine, and we definitely wouldn't have anybody fucking murdered.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, as we started talking here, you're talking about these big pharma and generic. All of a sudden, we start, like, what you start hearing now, you're like, sounds a lot like organized crime, sounds like kind of like, mob ties. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? And then when you dive deeper into Barry, you're like, this guy's got more shady businesses going on.
He's got more fucking shady business,
he wasn't just dealing with pharmaceuticals, right?
That was his main moneymaker, but that's not all he did. That's not all he did. He also put money into a yacht chartering company, which turned out to be a shell corp, right? So, I mean, you always hear of shell corps, like, oh, they make this corp to do this, X, Y, and Z. They don't actually do that, right?
Yeah, kind of like Big Theory.
Do that. Kind of like Big Theory. We don't make any fucking podcasts. You're being duped. You're being duped by Big Theory.
Yeah.
So he turns out this yacht chartering company, but he never bought any yachts, right?
Yeah.
So what were they doing? Do you think just like laundering money or what?
Oh yeah, maybe he like bought a majority stake in a company that sold a nutritional supplement that was owned by American fraudster Kevin Trudeau. Is there any relation there?
No
relation.
No.
I mean, people would jump on it, but no relation.
Probably just shady, but
yeah, like he was obviously using the shell corporation to either hide funds overseas, move money without knowing, and like he Kevin Trudeau went to jail.
Convicted fraudster.
Yeah, convicted fraudster. And it's wild that he was just rubbing shoulders with Barry Sherman. And Barry Sherman was...
Sherman owned shares in the company, which he sold then his shares to Apotex to pretty much
shield himself.
Hide him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he shield himself from the possible investigation.
His fucking dick pills didn't work out. They had to get out of there. Old Kevin Trudeau had to go to jail because they're selling fucking illegal dick pills, gas station ones, and blew up in their face.
Yeah, and then he's hiding behind his company, being like, the company's the shield. I don't own them. The company owns them.
Yeah, it looked legitimate to me. The company owns it. And what are you going to do? Nothing. You can't touch me. The power of the corporation is fucking...
It's wild.
Really strong.
It's wild.
That's why I'm glad we're incorporated.
That's why we have Big Theory Productions, so we can get all the shady shit behind.
We pretty much got diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, that's how
pretty much.
Big Theory is our shield.
Yeah.
Now, and like, so not only was he was doing some shady business, obviously Kevin Trudeau, he learned his lessons. He wasn't going to hang out with any other shady characters, right?
No unsavory characters going forward, right?
Learned his lesson. Until he partnered with someone called Frank D'Angelo.
Oh, you
Who
mean
was-
the fruit juice king of Canada?
Yeah.
Fruit Juice King.
The guy, the wannabe Tony Soprano.
Oh my God, this guy's he's ridiculous, man.
I read this. I don't know what it was. Cheetah Power Surge? What the fuck was that?
Good question. They probably made a lot of money off that, right?
Yeah.
Steelback Brewery. Didn't know that either.
Yeah. So Frank and Sherman, worked together to produce Cheetah Power Surge energy drink, and then they started a Steelback Brewery. And then both these D'Angelo brands went bankrupt in 2007. It's estimated that Sherman lost up to $100 million. But that's not the only thing D'Angelo was into.
Didn't stop there.
D'Angelo was, he thought himself a regular George Clooney, and he wanted to star in his own films. And when I say that, you might think, oh, these might be adult films. They were not adult films. They were films, in fact, no one should ever see or have to sit through. The worst kind of fucking movies you've ever seen in your entire life.
The Sicilian Vampire, the Red Maple Leaf, the Joke Thief.
If you pull up some clips, you can watch some clips of those. # look it up. I cannot sit and watch anymore. It's like,
they rival The Room.
Yeah, it's bad. It's like, yeah,
the Canadian Room.
The Canadian Room. It's some of the worst acting, the worst screenplays. And Barry was funding this, right? Sure.
Continuously. He continued to fund this guy after all these ventures went fucking bankrupt.
$100 million, and he's just still giving money to this guy. He even helped him after D'Angelo was arrested on sex assault and obstruction of justice charges, that were later dropped.
Bankrolling a diddler, come on.
And he bankrolled, he helped him with legal fees as well in that. He financed all 8 films D'Angelo made through 2013. Academy Awards, 0, Grammys, 0, Oscars, 0.
What did Frank D'Angelo have on Barry Sherman?
Right? Why
Let's be honest here.
What did he have?
Why the fuck are you giving this guy, you're just losing money hand over fist. And this guy's it doesn't take long to look at him, to get him for an interview for this case. He was he was acting like he's some sort of mob boss. Right?
Dude, he's basically impersonating Vito Corleone, sitting at this fucking table, being like, "Listen, I know what happened to Barry. Somebody made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he refused." And that's word for word. He says that, he quotes The Godfather, and he's sitting there and he's in his suit and, and he's got the food in front of him and he's acting like he's all mafioso. You're like, what the fuck? It's pretty cringe, right? It's pretty easy to see through this guy, but maybe he did actually have some connections, right? Maybe this guy did have some mafia ties and Barry was indebted to him for some reason.
Right. Well, it goes back to, some of the shady dealings with, getting some of these top executives. If they're hiring private investigators, maybe Frank D'Angelo was Barry Sherman's connection to, the kind of the criminal underworld, right? So it's he was making these connections for him.
Yeah,
and
they were getting fucking generic brand gabagool, huh?
Yeah. And then he was using that I'll do you a favor, but now you got to do me a favor. Right. So maybe he knew a lot about these, intricate dealings, whether it be stealing patents from other companies, right? Or who knows what they were up to. But perhaps that's why he had that on him, because he had that information. But obviously he's done. He's after 2013, he made these shitty movies.
Good.
He's not going to fucking hang out with any other shady
bankrolling
characters,
these losers, right?
He would never work with another fraudster, right?
No.
There's no chance.
No.
Except when he worked with convicted fraudster Sean Rutenberg. No big deal.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's still in jail.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is late 2010. So, he's dead in 2017. So this is pretty close. He's working with this.
He's in bed with this guy. Yeah.
So what is it? He's a Cineplex Odeon co-founder.
No,
sorry. He was introduced by Cineplex Odeon co-founder.
I was part of
Myron Gottlieb or whatever his name is.
Yeah, Myron Gottlieb? Gottlieb? Who had met Rosenberg in prison following his conviction of fraud in the collapse of Livent. So Livent was his company, I'm guessing, right?
I have no fucking idea what it is. But
And then Rudenberg persuaded Sherman to invest in his development of an online trivia game, which obviously didn't
pan out. I mean, if anyone pitches, the history of, hey, you want to help me make an online trivia game? The answer should be no. You want to invest in an online trivia game?
We played that one pretty hard. What was that one? Remember? The one I used to beat your ass at? Marvel Trivia?
Oh,
you pick the category and we played it. It was a blast.
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe that was the app. Maybe short-lived. But, Barry sues like Rudenberg. He was like, a second he didn't like, he's like, I don't like it. Sue him.
Well, he beliehes he pocketed the money. Like he didn't get his worth his investment.
He probably fucking did.
He probably did, yeah.
But so did Frank D'Angelo. So
yeah. He makes the difference making the shittiest movies. Now,
the Sicilian Vampire.
It's a great name. Hashtag look it up. So now it's like, now when you start to paint this picture, you're like, okay, well,
Barry Sherman was not just like a well-meaning philanthropist who wanted to give cheap drugs to Canadians because he hated big pharma. He was also a guy that would do anything to make a buck, to go to court, to win a lawsuit, to stick it to whoever didn't like him. He had endless enemies at this point, it almost seems like.
This fucking, like, we're about to get into a list of suspects here in this whodunit, and it literally feels like we're playing fucking Clue.
Because it seems like, so we started the case file like, okay, these two elderly people are murdered in their house.
Pillars of Canadian society, like
people are murdered.
Fucking Justin Trudeau's at his funeral. The mayor was at his funeral. Like,
yeah, it was
people
huge.
are murdered all the time, and no one makes a huge deal. There's whatever reason, but for this case, huge political and influential impact in Canada. And then after you go through, you're like, well, who would why would you murder this amazing, giving, beautiful human being? Why? And then you're like, oh, wait, he actually is involved in all of this other stuff. And there is countless people who would probably, given the chance, without any repercussions, would just kill him with their bare hands. Right?
We're about to get into those people.
So now, just to quickly go over, on the day of the killings, it is estimated that Honey arrived home first. They left Apotex. Honey left first, parked upstairs. The leading theory is that when she opened the door, she was probably met by an intruder there. That intruder, scuffle ensued. She ended up in the bathroom, either dialed 911, didn't. The phone was hung up and placed on the phone. Whether she was hit or not, we don't know. At that point, Honey was most likely dragged through the top floor and then down the stairs, which could have possibly accounted for her, face mark, like the injuries to her face.
Post-mortem abrasions. They're abrasions. Yeah, that's what the autopsy said.
We don't 100% know if that's in fact the case. But the idea is that she would have been dragged down the stairs because 15 minutes later, Barry comes in the lower garage, enters the garage, and as he comes in through the door where the spiral staircase is, with a handful of papers and his briefcase, he's met by the intruder. Those are dropped, and then they don't really know what happens other than they're both dead by the pool, right? Hanging from the bar. Now, when you start to look at it like this, I mean, they had one security camera, right? One security camera in the house, which was in the pool room, which wasn't running, never ran. And these two were hung there. Now, I start to think that, man, this seems like a professional hit. This seems like, right? Even Canadian, it's wild because like you watch Canadian interviews about this and they're like, this is rare. Like normally, this is how Canadian, we're like, normally a whack job is with a gun. For everything we've seen in movies, a whack job is someone with a gun who comes and shoots them. These people are strangled, very rare. Who has these kind of resources, right? Big Pharma, right? By all accounts, Big Pharma and Barry Sherman were at fucking odds, right?
Well, when you think about it, how much more professional of a job does it be when you don't leave anything behind? There's no blood. There's no nothing. Strangulation is almost the perfect form of murder.
There was a crazy stat I came across too. There was one guy who's investigating murders in North America, and it was like 800,000 murders since whatever, and only 22 murders involved elderly people being suffocated, strangled. 22 out of all of those over all the years of this guy keeping track of murder. Like two elderly people being strangled to death has only happened 22 times, and usually because of something to do with money.
Now,
And it fits the bill.
Fits the bill.
The second thing is like, you have to obviously, like, big pharma, these big pharmaceutical companies were fucking choked. They were already, there was rumored allegations about hiding child pornography on his computers, planting drugs. They had investigators, private investigators, tailing him, hanging around the parking lots, like leering around, looking in cars. Like, they were already kind of doing shady stuff. And it's like, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars that these patents are worth, right? And they're just watching these profits go to Barry on stuff that he stole.
They've spent, I don't know how much on research and development. Like, think about that, right? Like, that's fucking wild.
Yeah. So the other thing that why I think it might be big pharma, and this is an interesting point, is because big pharma and these big pharmaceutical companies have a lot of money and they have a lot of sway on political will. And the reason I bring that up is because I find it fucking unfathomable that the Toronto Police Service didn't look at anything other than a murder-suicide for 5 to 7 weeks until a group of private investigators had to come in and be like, look at this stuff. And they went, oh,
feels like somebody was covering it up.
Right?
It feels like it does, because, if you go with all the major metropolises in Canada, Toronto is number one. You would think you would have some of the best detectives in Canada. You think they've worked tons of murders and other cases similar, and they don't do the due diligence that you would think they would. It's fishy.
Right? And it could be as this. It could be as simple as this. Having enough political sway in certain points that someone just has to say, like, I like murder-suicide for this. That's what we're going with. And you tell you put an investigator on that's toeing the line of whatever he's told, right? And you're putting the pressure on these top officials, be like, it's murder-suicide, right? And they're just not looking at it.
Or you just, something simple as that, be like, you know what? I'm pulling the strings here. We're going to put the majority of our resources on this MacArthur case, and we're going to send a couple duds over to the fucking Sherman case.
Easy.
A couple guys that they're lazy.
Let's
put our fucking... just somebody that it's lazy. It's going to be like, there's nothing easier than walking in and be like, murder-suicide case closed. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
No suspects, no interviews, no nothing. We don't have to do nothing. Our job's this easy.
Who are those fucking two detectives on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the Scully and
and Hitchcock. Scully and Hitchcock.
That's who they sent. That's who they sent to the fucking Sherman murder.
Right, but I like big pharma for this, and I think a lot because the hit is personal. They didn't steal anything. Nothing gets stolen. Right, they're left, and it message sent.
It sends a message. And I don't know if you guys came across this. I randomly came across that the Shermans in their living room have art of two human figures sitting with their backs against the wall in a very similar fashion to how the Shermans were found.
We should have a picture of it.
Yeah,
it's super bizarre. The way that Barry's positioned with his right leg over top of his other leg that's straight out. Like, that is not a natural fucking position for somebody to be in.
Yeah. So this is it's like an abstract art. It's an abstract art piece. I don't even know what it's made of. Like, it's like cardboard or some weird shit.
No, it's apparently made from junk. Like, just random shit.
But it's made to look abstract. Like, it looks like a human figure, but not really.
And
the bizarre thing too is this has been
just like how they're found.
This thing was made in the 70s, and apparently the Shermans have had it since the early 80s. And it's been in every one of their houses.
And like it's in the hallway that leads to the stairs and like to the pool. This is the adjacent room. Like, this is the room across the hall from the pool. So it's like those are right there. And it does look like the bodies are staged. Like, you don't cross your legs to suffocate, right? And it's like if you're killed, it looks like they would be purposely like, you would be kicking your legs if you were getting strangled or something. You know what I mean? So it seems like
it's weird.
It's very, very strange. It feels
weird.
like the legs were, put like that.
The bodies were
afterwards.
staged. It looks like
They're sitting the same
resemble
way.
those fucking statues.
Statues.
Honey's on the right, Barry's on the left. Like it's just like the layout of the statues.
It's a message was sent. Like
It's weird.
it's targeted. It's a targeted. It
Right.
seems like a targeted hit.
Absolutely no evidence, no sign of forced entry. The people, whoever was there would have had to know the house, right? Would have had to know what they were doing. Moved quickly and efficiently to get in and out, right? Subdue. Well, I mean, they're in their 70s, so how hard would it have been to subdue them? It's hard, but no weapon use, right? Like strangulation, both of them.
The one thing that I would like, if these professional hitmen wanted to make it look like a suicide, I think they maybe would have fucking like, why not force them to at gunpoint to write a suicide note, something like that, or have somebody that made one up, typed one up
to actually hang themselves from like something that a person trying to commit suicide would do.
Right. Like,
Well,
so that's the one thing that I come.
I think that, but here's, I'll argue this point, and as we move on, this point will get more clear in my perspective, like in my thought process anyways, is that there is we're going to talk about some current litigation that just settled between Barry and some of his family members. That was very fucking public, very public. So in my perspective, if there's no suicide note and somehow whoever is pulling the strings, you can't get the cops to not look away from a double homicide right away, you already have fucking perfect suspects lined up to potentially, because let's say if you're shooting like, hey, we want to get out of the first 48, right? Hypothetically, if you got a couple fucking prime suspects that you can kind of point this at, perfect. Who's one of these other prime suspects that we might want to look at?
Well, if we're gonna get into this, we're gonna get into this suspect. We have to take it back. We have to take it fucking way back. How far back exactly? We got to take it back to the sale of Empire Pharmaceuticals to Barry Sherman. The deal actually included a written option that Sherman's first cousins, the four orphans, would have the right to work for the company at age 21 and purchase up to 5% of each of the firm's shares. Right, so
not even
that would have given
purchase. I thought just be awarded 5%.
Well, apparently they were able, in the write up that I read, they were able to purchase it, which would have given them about 20% of the company. Right.
Right.
So Empire was sold, like we know, Empire was sold 4 years later, which kind of made the agreement null and void. And then 3 years later, in 1974, Sherman founded Apotex. Well, in 2007, those four orphans filed a lawsuit claiming a 20% stake in Apotex and damages up to $1 billion on the grounds that Sherman failed to honor his 1967 Empire option agreement and breached his fiduciary duty to his uncle's sons. So basically, like layman's terms, the brothers claimed that Empire led to Apotex.
Yeah.
Right? Which it did.
It did. And when you look at it through this lens, if you're a businessman and you're slaving away making this company, you turn this company that was struggling and now it's successful. And in the back of your mind, you're going, at any point in time, I could lose 20%. At any point. Tomorrow, if these people want to show up and buy it, it's theirs. And I will lose 20%.
Yeah, but these people are also your fucking cousins who lost their parents. And one of those parents is the one that showed you the fucking ropes in this industry. And you had no fucking idea going into it. And he took you under his wing knowing that you lost your father at a very young age.
Barry was a different breed. By all accounts, he was cutthroat.
Absolutely.
He didn't give a shit.
It's interesting that you say that.
You
say that he's cutthroat and he didn't give a shit because the cousins contended that Sherman had offered them, remember we talked about all that financial assistance, helping them with their fucking careers and bailouts and everything. He offered that financial assistance in the first place in order to make the cousins dependent on him and to keep them from learning about their rights to the business. that he sold.
So he used that $15 million that he would fund their, failing business ventures and houses and stuff as a way to keep them under his thumb. Right.
Yeah. And
because they were, a lot of them, because of the trauma and stuff, had developed addiction issues that he, by rightly so helped them with, but was it out of the kindness of his heart, or was it because, it's like they're on a short leash, so he knows what they're doing?
And then here's where things get interesting, because 3 months to the day that Barry and Honey were found dead, the lawsuit was dismissed, stating the sale of Empire nullified the option agreement, and Apotex did not own or use any of the assets, goodwill, or property or business of Lou Winter's former company. And the claimed interest in Apotex was wishful thinking and beyond fanciful. And Sherman then countersued the cousins and they were ordered to pay upwards of $300,000 back to Sherman.
And they have nothing.
$300,000, and he wanted $1 million. Yeah. And the judge settled.
And the judge settled for $300,000.
Now, the other thing is, so in that judgment, basically they told the orphan cousins that, like, hey, unfortunately, you would have had to exercise your right to buy Empire. That was so you would have had to exercise or shown interest in exercising that right before the sale.
When you were like 10 years old.
But they didn't know. That's the thing. They had no idea. They had no idea they were entitled to that.
Right?
Well, and this is where the corporation comes in, right? When Empire dies, it's not Empire at all anymore. Yeah. Now it's Apotex.
Apotex rises from the ashes.
Yeah. But they have a whole new legal entity in a new company. That's guaranteed. That's why
he sold it. 100%.
That's guaranteed why he started the new company, because he knew.
It's the same. They got in the same industry.
This is a limited liability company, right?
Yeah.
The LLC.
So these family members, one of them ended up, like we talked about, ended up dying. One of them, who was still alive, Carrie Winter, went in a very popular interview. We all watched it on the Fifth Estate. You can watch it on YouTube. And in this interview,
Carrie or is it Kevin?
It's Carrie Winter. He actually claims that in the 90s, Barry had hired him to kill Honey Sherman. Claimed that he was getting sick of being around her, couldn't stand being in the same room with her, and basically claimed that, I want you to whack my wife.
So if you're not from Canada, there is a very good investigative journalist series called The Fifth Estate, which they interview him and they ask him this, and he spills the beans. Like, yeah, I was asked to kill, and in the end, we didn't go through with it. Like, they got cold feet or whatever.
So they actually put his feet to the fire a little bit, which I was really impressed by. And they brought in a polygraph. And made Carrie do the polygraph and ask him if this was, if the story was in fact true. And he in fact failed the lie detector. And then after this, he was obviously quite distraught. And he's like, well, that's what I remember. That's what happened. And then they ask him while he's on the polygraph, did you kill Barry and Honey Sherman? And he refused to answer. His lawyer was there, refused the answer. But you know what he did say, which gets, in my mind, is pretty much just as incriminating? They ask him, like, well, how did you feel against your cousin? And he basically breaks down a bit and says, my cousin lied to me and stole everything from me, and said, I would talk about killing Barry. And it was very graphic, Winter said.
Fantasize about killing, yeah.
He would come out of the Apotex parking lot, and I would be hiding behind a car, and I would just decapitate him. I wanted to roll his head down the parking lot, and I'd sit there and wait for the police.
And he basically in this interview he goes, I had he's like, you look at me as someone who wants to kill him. I did want to kill him. I hated him. I wanted to see him dead. I hated him. I had all the motives. To kill him. And
I had
no alibi.
Zero alibi. I have zero alibi.
He goes, I was at home watching TV. That's it. That's all I was doing.
And he said it would have been very easy for me to have left work at any time because I'm not on the clock. I could have easily have driven over to the Sherman home and did the deed.
And he said, he wished he did it. He's like, I wish I did it.
At the same time, he lived a life of depression and, obviously the childhood trauma. So it turned him to drugs. He admits to being a crackhead. He didn't just do crack. He was a crackhead, meaning
there's no sugarcoating it.
Yeah.
There's no sugarcoating it. He was a crackhead. He was lost in the crack for a while and he's come out of it. But yeah, he pretty much says like, I wish I did it. I could have done it. I have no alibi.
I have all the means to do it.
I have all the means to do it.
But it wasn't
wild.
But also denies doing it.
Denies the polygraph when asked and denies any further comment about it.
And he has been cleared as a suspect, supposedly.
Yes.
Supposedly.
So like maybe there's some information that the private investigators or the RCMP that are, and it's not uncommon for investigations to hold a couple pieces of information close to the chest that would only the killer would know to make sure it's a solid case. So for whatever reason, we don't really know, but Kerry Winter has been cleared. He's no longer a suspect right now. Well, he's not officially a suspect. Let's put it like this, because when you look at him,
he's suspicious.
It is suspicious. Some of these things he's saying.
He's suspicious.
Now, he's got to be the only family member that we're going to look at, right?
Before we get into that, though, before we get into family, I just wanted to touch on something because it's a little bit smaller. Okay. So we've talked about the fact that Barry's been prone to litigation. Canada's most litigious man, right?
Yeah.
So, the house that they were currently living in, right?
Yeah.
When they had it built, the Shermans actually sued the designers and builders of the house for poor construction and recouped $2 million of the 2.3 cost. So they built the house for 2.3 million and recouped 2 million of it. And as you can imagine, the parties involved in building the house took like a fucking ridiculous financial hit.
But these are most of these people they're blue collar workers.
And you know where the most contention was held? You know where the most acrimony about the fucking property was held?
The pool?
In the pool house. Okay? Who had come and go fucking whenever they wanted in the last little bit? Who had free range of the house? Who left the window fucking half open to let paint dry?
Right?
I see where you're going with this.
Right?
But was it the same? Is it the same builder that was litigation?
Do you think Barry knows?
Way.
Yeah, but you have no idea, right? One of these contractors started as a framer, started his own business, became a contractor. Well, he got sued to shit and went broke, so he had to go back to swinging a hammer. So he goes back and works as a fucking laborer swinging hammer and takes a job at the same house that he helped build that financially destroyed him.
So one of the renovators, one of the contractors said, "You fucked me over back in the day. I'm going to get you back."
Fuck yeah.
Right?
Like destroyed lives.
Right at this pool.
We know for a fact that a window was left open by a renovator to air out a room that was freshly painted. So it could make sense that if you're working on the team, you're just looking for an opportunity, and you kind of you see someone, you're like, leave that window open, perfect, right? And you just come and lay in wait. But it does seem the problem I have with the renovators when I look at it is the timing, because I always feel that whoever did this had to have known or been tipped off by someone that they're coming home spaced apart, because you've got to act fast, because if Barry comes home at the same time, you're fucked. Like, you're fucked. You can't do that.
Why? They're old.
No,
but why could you not take two old people?
I mean,
if one dials 911,
what if he had a gun?
I think the method of murder would have changed. It would have went from fucking ligature strangulation to fucking double taps.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, when I hear that, I go, okay, well, that's probable, right? That's probably what happened. But what if they came home at the same time and you were on it and you had a gun? And you caught them before any phones, anything.
The method of murder just changes.
But why not just, if you already caught them and you have them gunpoint, why not just make them do whatever you want at that point?
But see, here's the thing is for me is this.
I feel like you'd put up a struggle.
I feel
you're going to die either way. You put up a fight.
I feel like whoever did this knew their time and knew their patterns, because of the fact that they were waiting upstairs first for Honey. right? And then when
that's assumption.
Honey,
No, we don't know that. That's an assumption.
Yes, that is it's true, but that's the when you look at the series of events, Honey was home first, right?
Yeah, we know that.
And she made it. She made it into the bathroom across the hall with her phone. We know that.
No, we
don't
know that.
Okay,
how do we know that the fucking killer didn't put the phone in there? We don't know. The phone ended up in the bathroom.
Fair enough. But then, the killer then waits at the bottom of the stairs for Barry because he drops his stuff in surprise. So we know he's waiting, right? So he knows he was taking that. And
the other thing too is the thing that came to my mind too is maybe he came up from behind him and started strangling him, and that's why he dropped the papers.
Maybe.
Right?
That's
like
possible.
in my head, I feel like these were both sneak. Like in my head, I see they both were snuck up on, lynched, over.
It just, the odd thing is the lack of a fight at all. I guess you can put someone out.
That's what I mean. That's why I think
quick.
and that's why I think it was a sneak. Like that's why I feel like you would fight otherwise, right?
So on the thing of the renovators, like one of the things that you can find in some interviews and some talk is that Honey Sherman was not friendly to these people renovating her house. Like
I can go by personal experience. When you work in a rich person's house, they are generally, you work for them and they let you know.
Yeah,
that's just how it is.
They don't go around calling you cracker though, do they? Because I've heard some unsavory things about Honey and her.
Honey was maybe
cracker, or was it more a little anti-Semitic?
Well, she wasn't anti-Semitic because she was Jewish.
Yeah,
but she was
dropping
very hard on Middle Eastern people and Arabs, and apparently
didn't like them working in her house. Let's put it that way.
And like, hey, listen, there's a lot of Arab and Jewish friction. Like that's a normal thing going back a very long time.
Thousands of years.
So that's
thousands of years.
Like that's pretty normal. But apparently she really liked to shit on
everybody.
Yeah. Well, and especially
color.
Yeah.
People of color.
And Muslims.
Yeah, Muslims and Arabs. And
so her attitude may have triggered what you're saying here. It may have pushed someone over the edge to be like, fuck this girl.
Well, I'm going to make a loose link. I'm going to make a loose link that I kind of made between the renovators and possible extremist terrorist groups. And the reason is, a little jump, but bear with me here, right? One of the things that Barry and Honey Sherman were involved in, and Andrew, you might remember the name. It's now past my mind, but they're involved in a group that basically would try to buy and sell assets to bankrupt extremist groups so they couldn't fund terrorist activities.
United Jewish Appeal.
Yes. So they would work, in basically like a counter-terrorist group, right? But by bankrupting their corporations and their companies and what they were trying to invest their money in, they were actively trying to bankrupt them ahead of time, right? So this group was obviously fucking pissing off extremist groups, right? So you have this, and obviously, it was known that they were part of this group. So maybe their names are getting floated around of possible people that they want killed, these extremist groups, right? Now you have renovations, you have someone in there who just goes, hey, I'm working in their house. So you have maybe an affiliate, someone who works there, who knows someone who's involved with an extremist group. And they're like, I'm working in their house right now. And they go, can you leave a way for us to get in? Right. And so basically they're sending a message to the United Jewish Appeal. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Basically
but there was no real message. There was nothing to say that
they're dead.
Left the message. I know, but there was no
sense.
But maybe it has something to do with that statue. Maybe those statues, there's meaning in their positioning of how they were positioned that we don't understand. But
I love
someone
the reach,
does.
but I have no idea.
Well, and it's not only that too, because they actually got in some hot water with the JDL, the Jewish Defense League.
Is that like the Justice League?
Pretty much. It's like Mossad's and
all lawyers.
But they got a little bit of hot water with them because they were staunch supporters of the Canadian Liberal Party. And the JDL are like hardcore right wing. And they weren't okay with them backing the Liberal Party.
And the Trudeau government.
Yeah. And then so there was a lot of conflict there. Like they actually did some protesting. at his booster campaigns and everything like that. Like,
and Barry also blocked a big investigation into like he blocked a big investigation into like his dealings with like the Trudeau fundraising. He like put up a lot of money to block any kind of investigation.
Yep.
So it's that is a kind of interesting that maybe this has something to do with that, right?
well, and the JTL
right-wing
is on the
extremists.
FBI's terrorist list,
Right?
right?
So
Like,
maybe
that's
right. We've seen
What?
it's I don't think it's crazy to think it's not out of the realm of possibilities. But why don't we ground it more? Andrew, you said they're potentially not.
I'll talk about something that kind of this is where my, like, when I put up my fucking Pepe Silva board on the wall, and I was connecting fucking, the red fucking, what do you call it?
All your lines and dots.
Yeah, the lines, the
good shit.
dots, and all that shit. Something that really stuck out to me in an interview, Jonathan Sherman, the only son of Barry and Honey, he described his father as being brilliant but lacking in emotional and social intelligence. Okay,
Sounds about right to me from
right.
what I've heard.
So this is a man that, he's lacking the compassion. He, like Braden said, he put his business before everything else. He didn't go on family vacations. He was busy at work. He acted like opted out because he wanted to focus on work. Okay. From all accounts, it was a hard, cold upbringing for these kids, even though they grew up, with silver spoons up their ass.
Yeah.
Either way, in the summer of 2017, so we're talking right before the murders, months, Barry had lost a drug patent case, right? Apotex was likely going to have to pay upwards of $580 million to a rival company in January of 2018. Supposedly, Barry had very little cash liquidity and was scrambling for ways to pay. Sources say Barry wanted Jonathan, his son, and his business partner to help by putting mortgages on their chain of 9 self-storage properties, all purchased with instant interest-free loans from Barry. Okay? Right before his death, he recalled a $60 million loan that he had loaned Jonathan. Right?
Yeah. So
let's bring in the family members, right? This is Canada's most litigious man, who is, at the time of his death, had 1,200 cases open. A lot of them, he was not winning. And then you have fucking kids who are sitting here looking at their inheritance being fucking dwindled away. He's asking for money back, okay? He's been doing ridiculously terrible business deals with shady people, losing half his stake in Apotex due to bad investments in fucking dick pills, nutritional supplements,
fundraising, funding movies, C-list.
He's funding fucking movies. He's funding Frank D'Angelo, Canada's Fruit Kings, fucking also, moonlighting as a sex offender, and he's losing upwards of $100 million on these duds. Okay, these kids grew up in a cold, uncaring household, right? Like I said, there's no family vacations. Close to Barry's death, just out of nowhere, he randomly decided to rework his and Honey's wills. All right? It was reported that Barry Sherman was planning to make a substantial donation to a charity and also give Honey upwards of $100 to $500 million to donate to whoever she wanted to. Okay?
Well, you're painting a perfect picture for me. It would make sense for the...
Listen, it's going to get even fucking shadier, right? Because you have brother-in-laws. You have Jonathan and brother-in-law who are trustees for the will, executors for their estates. They have been the ones that have been fighting to keep these documents fucking sealed, right? Because they're worried that the killer is going to see where all the money's being distributed and come after some other people.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a fucking legit excuse to you? Do you want things to get even fucking shadier?
Love shady shit.
In 2019, you've got this fucking property. Listen, we talk about it all the time with these haunted houses that people live in, right? People have been murdered. These houses have bad juju, but people are going to move in because they want a fucking deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Everybody
I'm going
wants
to
a
move
deal.
in. So obviously, you know what? This is a beautiful house that has fucking how many different entrances and how many rooms and a fucking lap pool. It's a beautiful house. So obviously, we're going to resell this house, make a little bit of money out of it, and divide it up between the family, right? No, because in 2019, it was fucking demolished with all their belongings inside of it.
It was demolished.
The family decided to demolish this house
Bad juju.
and sell the property.
Well, when the family has that much money, I mean, you can do whatever you want.
You know what? I understand that aspect of like, but you could easily like that's a guy. So you're any kind of evidence that could have been lingering or anything that is gone. But I can also look at it through the lens of we have the financial means, and I never want to have to look at that house again where my parents died. So
You don't have to.
look.
None of them live there.
Yeah.
None of them live in that vicinity. Okay. So here's the kicker for me. When we're talking about these professional hits, you're telling me these people have knowledge of where Honey is. They know Honey's going to be at the house before Barry, right? We know Barry's coming coming after that. So why fucking kill Honey in the first place?
'Cause she's there.
But she was at the house first. They were split up. They didn't spend a lot of time together. Why kill Honey in the fucking first place?
Because you don't want
if Barry Sherman dies, Honey survives him, and all the estate goes to Honey Sherman.
As pretty normal for a wife.
Yeah, exactly.
And
why kill both of them?
Because you want control. You want control of the money.
You want the money,
right? You want what's left of it, right? And listen, maybe here's the thing: if they can, maybe it's something where it's like if they both die, a lot of that litigation goes away.
Well, not only does the litigation go away, but the fucking stupid fucking investments go away, the donations go away.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much to
stops.
It doesn't take much for me to have to take a hard look at Jonathan Sherman. I mean,
they were not close. They weren't close at all.
His eulogy for his dad, pretty cold.
No tears in his eyes.
No tears. Cold. And noticeably, like no family member standing with him. Other eulogies, family members are up there in support. No one stands with Jonathan.
It's gotten to the point now where some of this, like one of his sisters actually doesn't talk to him anymore because she believes he had something to do with it.
Yeah, it's, I mean.
Well, when there's nothing stitched up at the end, people are going to wonder forever.
Well, there's no fine forms of forced entry, anything like that. So who else can get access to the house that's not going to stress, your son walks in, you're not going to fucking freak out. You're going to be like, hey, what's going on, Jonathan? Well, next thing you know, he starts strangling you. I don't know.
Do you think he would do it himself though? Like that's the thing.
No, I don't. Right? I think he would have paid to have it professionally done. At the end of the day, in this case, for me, the one thing is just follow the money. Follow the fucking money. Where's the money now? Where are these billions of dollars now?
With the kids.
Who had the most to gain?
Well, it's tough, man,
people
because
on the will.
A lot. Like there's a lot of people who had a lot to gain or had a lot of
revenge, resentment.
Yeah.
Right? Barry Sherman's basically fucking Julius Caesar, and we got about 50 different people working on the Senate that took stabs at him. There's so many people that wanted this guy dead. I understand that, but when it comes down to what are you willing, what are you going to risk? Well, I'd risk a lot for a fucking $1 billion.
Well, and here's the thing. If Jonathan would know that Barry had said and was saying, I'm surprised Big Pharma hasn't killed me. Right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't killed me. $1,000 in the right pocket, you can have someone dead. And maybe that's a reference to him trying to hire Carrie earlier and Carrie setting up a hit. And then.
Well, and he knows all about the beef with Carrie too.
Right.
He knows all the people that want his dad dead.
Right. So he could easily frame this to, look like a plethora of other people very quickly. Right.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. It's a really, really tough one to, pin down.
It's a tough one because it's all speculation because there's no evidence.
Yeah.
That's the problem. There's really nothing. Like he probably
crazy boys.
If you follow the money, yeah, like okay, who benefits? Yeah, boom, 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 100%. But there's really nothing else. You're like, fuck.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I truly think that, looking at this, because this kind of reminded me of like when I started to look into like the big pharma and shit, like, this espionage shit, like you could play, this could be a fucking movie, the Barry Sherman stealing these fucking documents and shit. And then the big pharma trying to plant stuff. It started to remind me of like a mob story. And then I was thinking in my head that like, like in the 70s and stuff in like New York City, like any construction, like the construction trade in New York was in New Jersey controlled by the mob. And if you wanted to build anything, you had to pay a percentage to the mob. That's how it was, definitely. Right? Now, what if these kind of organized crimes, these like really like high functioning organized crimes have moved on to industries like big pharma? Right. And it's kind of a perfect front in my eyes because I'm thinking like, it's medicine. It's making people better, right? Like it's here to help people. But really you see all this fucking shady, like, especially in this one, like all this shady business going on behind it. It kind of makes me think that like, is there a possibility that these things are run and operated by, some sort of element of, criminal underbelly? Right. So it's
absolutely
stuff. Let us know what you think. Holy shit. There's so many ins and outs of this case. Hashtag look it up. There's tons of fucking awesome 30 minutes.
There's suspects we didn't even mention.
Yeah. 10 hours. However much research you want to do in this, there's videos and documentaries that will exceed. If you want to put 100 hours, there's hundreds of hours worth of looking into this case. Hashtag look it up. Tell us what you think. Who fits this? Who do you think? Let us know in the comments and stuff. So I got a theory of the week. We've got
theory of the week.
Sometimes you can get it through many means. One of the ways is to head to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, do them all just for fun. This is a 5-star rating from Kilted Commando from the United States. It says 5 stars. I approve. Where do I even start? I've been into things like aliens, alien abductions, mysterious places, etc. for around 35-ish years. So that's what my podcast history is full of. I found you quite by accident as a suggestion on my Amazon Music app about 2 months ago and have been listening ever since. I started with Case File 1. I am now on 71. At running the risk of sounding like a Mr. Conspiracy level D-bag, it's hard to find a subject along these lines I don't already know a ton about. However, I still love listening to them. The back and forth banter between you guys keeps me entertained for hours at a time. Y'all are the best thing to come out of Canada since gravy fries. If you haven't already done a case file on Stargates, we have. It's coming up for you. I'd love to hear one. Keep up the good work, and I'll keep listening. Keep those prolapsed brown eyes on the skies. Dale from Michigan. Dale, Kilted Commando, you are this week's Theorite of the Week. Thank you very much.
Hell yeah, that's fucking awesome.
Sunlight on the beehole, it's important.
Yeah.
You gotta bleach it. The sunlight, absorb energy that way.
Yeah, so I've heard.
Works. Personal experience. No big deal.
I think you just do full body bleaching, don't you?
Yeah, look at you.
I can't do full body bleaching.
Looks like you went crazy with the bleach, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
Hold on, hold on. Hey, look to your right. Just stop there. Zell, turn right a little bit, just ever so slowly.
Am I right?
Yeah, slowly. A little more right there. Do you see that eyebrow that he's got hanging out there? Look at that thing.
That's a good one.
I'm going to pull a zoom on that. Look at that. Zoom. Oh.
You wouldn't believe the eyebrows I get.
That's wild.
You fucking Whoville over here. I like it.
I once pulled a 6-inch eyebrow out of my brow.
Oh, yeah, I get those bad boys too. I get a few Eugene Levy's.
It pulls right through, like it's somehow wound through all the strands, and you pull it like.
What you're saying to me, what I'm hearing here is you only have about 6 eyebrow hairs that are.
It's just, yeah. They just like kind of like dread. They dread through on the brow there. No big deal. Anyways, if you're not supporting the show, you want early access to all the case files, ad-free, all the bonus content, you gotta go to alientheorist.com. Hit the support link. It'll take you to where you need to go. I don't know what we got, fucking 200 and, I don't even know anymore, 220, 230 hours of bonus stuff.
Tons of
bonus stuff.
Tons of
We appreciate all the support. This week's newest supporters,
We got Sarah Tate, Super Socks. Leaf Weimer goes up $1 in their pledge. Awesome.
I dig it. Thank
Love
you.
it. That's how you get your name read twice.
Yeah.
Go up $1. Tyler Bertrand, Chad Marks, and Max O'Donnell. Thank you very much for supporting the show. We fucking appreciate it.
Hey, and as we always say at the end of these things, keep those eyes on the skies.
Brace yourself for something fuel nominal. Unleaded 88 is the clear fuel choice. It's cheaper, cleaner, and greener. And it's grown by Iowa corn farmers. Now that's totally worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88.